Hi everyone, my name is Sherry West and I am the founder and CEO of Live Girl, and along with my fearless to welcome you to our International Day of the Girl celebration. Our theme this year is My Voice, Our Equal Future, and today's event is generously sponsored by AXA XL and Design. Today is a day to celebrate the way that girls are leading as change makers. And at Live Girl, we know that achieving gender justice is essential to achieving human rights, racial justice, inclusion, economies that work for all, and a sustainable environment for future generations. Across all of these efforts, girls are the agents of change leading the way. And we are honored at Live Girl to serve girls and young women starting in grade 5 and extending all the way through college to equip them with the leadership skills they need to thrive.
And I know that as an American, I'm grateful for my rights and opportunities, but around the world, 132 million girls are out of school. The global pandemic has further amplified inequality. More than 10 million secondary school-age girls are at risk of never returning to the classroom in the aftermath of school lockdowns because of harmful gender norms. There are still real challenges and obstacles for girls and women in the US, of course. Here to pay tribute is my friend, Naya Christian, a brilliant high school senior who will be reading her original poem, Limitless.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'll just go ahead and read it. So the poem's called Limitless. When I was 5, I always asked my mom to describe the most intellectually challenging jobs in the world. From thin lines in the palm of her hand, she drew rocket scientists, neurosurgeons, and astronauts. I told her not to fear, that I would become all of them. I would then urge her to describe the most physically demanding jobs. She told me about people who run into war zones and swim in flames, soldiers and firefighters. After those conversations and many more, I used to wonder how I was to go about completing 5 different careers in parallel, not to mention the 8 others I was aiming for: president, author, lawyer, journalist, dancer, musician, elephant caretaker, person who makes babies giggle 24/7. That's a job, right? You see, when I was younger, I didn't know the word limits. But I always went at tag during recess, and then the boys stopped playing with me, and I found that my confidence during group discussions about literary texts in a 5th grade classroom was perceived as arrogance, and eventually I learned my whole feminist agenda was off-putting. I came across as an angry witch with unending cries for equality. I must be a man-hater then. So I shrank. I shrank, I shrank, I shrank. I broke a mirror to slim my reflection's waist. I shrank until I no longer took up space, until I came to the conclusion that I couldn't be a rocket scientist because I was not nearly intelligent enough, and that I should never take a compliment without saying that's not true first, and that my body was not mine because it belonged to men's lingering eyes, so I should always cover it up. But at some point, I became so small from all my shrinking that I was hidden under a black veil of my own creation, nearly invisible. And I was left with 2 choices: disappear altogether, or learn to rebuild the parts of myself that the world asked me to disintegrate. I learned from women like Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuelle Charpentier, pioneers in CRISPR technology and the first women to independently win the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. I learned from Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old girl with Asperger's who single-handedly changed the way we think about climate change. I learned from Marie Curie and Malala and Little Miss Flint, women of our past and present and future, women who won't stop flooding spaces, who won't stop making their voices, their ideas, their contributions heard. They teach me to never make myself small. Not when I could be a neurosurgeon or an astronaut or a soldier or a firefighter or a rocket scientist. Not when I have the power to make the world go thin. Not when I am limitless.
Thank you so much, Naya. You are brilliant, and thank you for sharing your talent and your voice with us so that girls everywhere know that they are limitless. Thank you so much. So now we're going to introduce our special guests, and Olivia and I are gonna start by asking them 1 question each, and then we're gonna introduce a very special panel of girls who will take over the interview. And first, I'm going to introduce Fran Hauser. Fran is a longtime media executive, startup investor, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of The Myth of the Nice Girl, which, if you haven't read, you must read. It's received many accolades, including Amazon's Best Business and Leadership book. She's held senior positions at some of the world's largest digital media businesses, including People, InStyle, Entertainment Weekly, and AOL. Now a startup investor who largely invests in female founders, she was recently named one of Business Insider's 30 Women in Venture Capital to Watch. Fran is a frequent speaker on women's leadership and writes a regular career advice column for Refinery 21. She's also a dear, dear friend and supporter of Live Girl, and we're so honored to have you here today, Fran.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm still recovering from that poem. Nia is incredible. Nia, you're one to watch for sure. Amazing.
Absolutely. She's very talented. And just so you know, on that poem, I asked her late last week, I said, Nia, you're such a brilliant, talented writer. She has her own Instagram poetry site called @NiaWrites. I said, could you do us the honor of writing something special to celebrate the Day of the Girl? And like a few hours later, she sent that over and she said, is this okay? Nia, incredible.
Yeah, more than okay.
So Fran, we start by asking you the question. Both you and our other guests are both admired female change makers, and your career exemplifies what Live Girl stands for, a confident, inclusive leader. And so can you just start by sharing a little bit more about your background story and how you've been able to harness the power of your voice to make positive change?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, you know, when I think about my career, I've had a wide range of experiences, you know, from working in corporate finance to being a media executive to a startup investor. I've worked in big companies, I've worked in small companies. The one common thread, though, throughout all of those things is that I've always used my voice to advocate for women in the workplace. And I started out doing this, you know, really kind of more informally as a mentor. I'd have younger women who would come to me to ask me for advice. And I was so happy to be a sounding board for them or sometimes be a champion for them, you know, inside the company. Then I started writing, you know, I started writing for publications like Forbes and Refinery 29. And I would write about women's leadership and, you know, showing up authentically. And that then turned into a book, The Myth of the Nice Girl, which came out 2.5 years ago and has been translated into 8 languages. So it, you know, now has a global reach. The book also spawned a speaking career for me. So I've done over 150 talks since the book came out. So, you know, what's amazing is that I'm able to impact hundreds of thousands of women through these different channels, right? Whether it's like writing a blog post, my book, speaking, and really the message that I like to deliver is this message of how when you show up authentically and in a way that's aligned with your values, that you are more likely to be effective at work. And as you know, Sherry and Olivia, you know, I'm all about busting this myth that nice girls don't get the corner office. I really believe that you can be both nice and strong. You can lead with both. In fact, I think the most effective leaders do just that. And so it's just been, you know, really incredible for me. It's just been an incredible experience being able to use my voice to get this message out into the world. And I think really the other insight for me is that even if you use your voice to impact one other person, there is so much power in that, right? So like I even go back to mentoring, which I still do today, right? Taking the time to sit with an individual who might be struggling, who might be looking for a little bit of advice, maybe a little bit of championing, taking the time to do that and having the courage to use your voice to be helpful to someone else there's so much power to that. So whether you're doing it for one person or you're doing it for millions of people, it's something that I think we're all obligated to do. We have a responsibility to do it, and it's actually really rewarding.
I love that perspective, just the power of impacting just one person. Don't go anywhere because we have many more questions for you, but now Olivia is going to introduce our other special guest today.
So our other panelist is Deb Elam, founder and CEO of Corporate Playbook. Deb enjoyed a long and successful career at GE, which culminated at the top of corporate and philanthropic achievement as president of the GE Foundation and chief diversity officer. She then founded Corporate Playbook, a business consulting firm that specializes in executive coaching and strategic solutions. She's a frequent speaker on diversity and leadership, empowering leaders to elevate diversity in the workplace. So thank you for joining us, and I'd just like to ask the same question to you. So can you share your background story and how you've been able to harness the power of your voice to make positive change?
Sure. Thank you, Sherry and Olivia, and thank you, Fran, for your remarks as well and joining me on the panel today. First of all, happy International Day of the Girl. This is a big deal. It's a big day, and I welcome everybody who's here to celebrate and join and really to help girls find their voice, amplify voices, and talk about our equal future. You know, for me, when I think about my journey, you know, I almost think about if I were to write myself a letter when I was a girl, you know, from now, what would I tell myself? What would my advice be based on all of my experiences? You know, I was never a shy girl, but I would always feel a little reluctant. Like, should I say anything? Should I not? You know, a little uncomfortable with that. And what are the boys gonna think? And all of those things, you know, kind of come rushing in. For me. So if I were to go back and tell myself now, you've heard about who I am now, but if I were to go back before you knew this person and to kind of reassure that girl that you're going to be okay, here are the things I would say along life's journey. First of all, and Fran expressed it as authenticity. You know, I'll say just be yourself. Be yourself, because it's really hard and it's draining to try to be somebody else. Because you got to try to be that other person. You got to think about that other person. Just be yourself. Yourself is enough. Get involved. Get involved in clubs, activities at school. That will increase your comfort in speaking. It will increase your comfort in expressing your views. I was always involved in different after school kinds of activities, things like Live Girl, you know, that just made me more and more comfortable, you know, and confidence is something that grows, it builds. I'm tall, I'm 5'8", so my mother, you know, in honor of her, would always say, stand tall, don't slump. You know, just reach your full, be erect, you know, have a commanding presence. So stand tall, whatever your stature, whether you're 5'2" or 5'10", stand tall in your stature and speak clearly, you know, because what you have to say is important. What you have to say matters. So don't mumble it, just say it, speak it, be it, live it, be forward, be confident in it. You know, another thing, and this is something I learned a lot more as I got older and into the workplace, but it's a concept called the meeting before the meeting. So what ends up happening with young women and women in the workplace is you may present an idea and nobody says anything in the room. But if a guy presents the idea, everybody's like, oh, yeah. One way to avoid that is to share your ideas with a few people. So if you're in a club at school and you think this is what we should do for the fundraiser, of course, this is going to be when the coronavirus is gone. You want to talk to people in advance to say, hey, you know, Billy, what do you think? I was thinking about this. What do you think? And Billy will say, yo, that's a good idea, but you know, you might want to change it this way. Oh, so if I changed it like that, you would support it. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the meeting before the meeting. So sometimes when you share your ideas one-on-one or with key people, you have a better chance of selling it, if you will, or getting it agreed upon by the group. Take risks. Don't be afraid. I know that sounds very easy to say, but take risks. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You fail, you get up, you try again. So take risks, try new things, try different things. That will always, again, you're not going to succeed at all of it, but it's going to teach you that in fact you can lean in and try different things. look for examples of other girls who are doing things and doing things that are wonderful. You know, it's easy for your generation now to use the internet, use Google to just search other stories. If you aspire to do something, search girls who are doing that, you know, because it's a big world of girls. And then the last thing I'll share, and this is something that I did for a long time when I was a girl, and it really, really helped me. I created my alter ego, you know, and her name was Debbie. And Debbie was all the things I aspired to be. Debbie was just sharp. Debbie was bold. Debbie would get out there and do it. And so anytime I had some fear, I would start to think, well, what would Debbie do? What would Debbie do? And if Debbie could do it, I could do it too. And I did that. I played that little game with myself for a long time until I just had the confidence to become. And I eventually did become Debbie. So I look forward to our conversation and our time together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb. That was so powerful, so wise. So now we're going to invite Allison's going to promote a panel of some brilliant, talented, diverse young women to come on the screen and ask you a question. At Live Girl, we've got a very large and growing community of girls, and they're all leaders, and they're all ready to rise up and to make a positive change in this world. And I think you're going to really enjoy meeting them and hearing their questions. So first up, we have Chessa Lewis, who is a high school sophomore from Westport, Connecticut.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Our first question for both women is, how do you see the world changing for women? Trailblazing role models like both of you show us what's possible, but we're aware of the gender norms and power structures that hold girls and women back. So we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Fran, I'll defer to you.
God, that is such a big question and such an important question. And look, I do think that it keeps getting better little by little. You know, we've been making, we've definitely been making progress across, I don't know, so many different areas when it comes to equal rights. We do still have, I think, a long way to go. And I am a little bit worried about what I'm seeing with coronavirus and just how many women are dropping out of the workforce because it's so difficult. It's, you kind of have to choose, like, between the kids or do I stay at work? For many women, right? They have to make that choice. So I'm really hoping that companies, that corporations will step up and do the right thing when it comes to assisting and supporting with childcare. I think it's just one of the most important things that we can do as a country, as a world, is to give women the support that they need so that they don't have to choose. And I think some companies are really starting to step up. So I think that's encouraging. But, you know, my biggest message is we can't give up, right? Every single one of us has to keep trying and fighting the fight. And no matter what it is, like for me, you know, I tend to focus on women in the workplace, but there are inequities across every single part of our lives. So it's really going to take all of us to each do our part. And that's what I would encourage, you know, all of you to do. And that's why I love what Sherry and Olivia are doing with Live Girl, because they're basically, you know, in my mind, they're encouraging you to advocate and to mobilize and to take action. So that's what I would love to inspire all of you to do.
Yeah, the only thing, I agree with Fran, the only thing I would say, I think the door's never been wider for women. It's never been wider. If you look at every aspect of society, there are more women represented. Now, they're not enough, but there are more women. If you look politically, on both sides of the aisle, there are more women who hold political office. There are more women who are running for political office. There are women in corporations. Companies are looking for women to be on boards. corporate board. So, which is the governance structure. So I don't see it as a thing of giving up. I see it as something, if I'm in your shoes, you've got to be prepared. You've got to educate yourself. You've got to be knowledgeable. You've got to engage. You've got to get experience, because I think the door is as wide as it's ever been. I think it's going to be wider because your generation coming and girls like you all over the world are going to kick the doggone door down. Because that's what I see. I have daughters who are in their early 20s, and the way they view the world is just so different than the way I viewed the world when I was their age. And what they see limitless. They see possibilities. So I would encourage you to keep that mantra, and just know that there is more hiring. It's tough. It is not easy, but I do think the opportunity is there. You just got to seize it. And the other thing I'll add is, no path is the right path. If you want to be in the workforce, if you will, in a job with a company, an organization, that's great. If you want to be an entrepreneur, that's great. The path that you choose is the right path for you.
And Deb, I can assure you that all of these young women are ready to kick in the door.
All right.
Especially our next questioner, Abner Lee Massonet, who is a high school senior from Stamford, Connecticut.
Yay!
Hey, Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you both for being here. You guys are very, very inspiring. And my question for both of you today is, what is your why? And what gets you up in the morning? And how can a young woman build her why so she can continue to go on her path and her journey and, reaching her end goal?
I can start. So my why has really always been around impact, and really making a positive impact in kind of whatever I take on, whether it's my career, whether it's my family, whether it's community service, the world. I think that's a word that is really important to me. I want to leave a lasting impact, and I want to do the right thing. And I love lifting people up. I love supporting. I love advocating. I love taking action, on behalf of people. But I really think the why for me is what's the kind of highest and best use of myself? And I'm always thinking about that. What is that highest and best use? And how do I make the largest possible impact that I can?
For me, my why, the why that really, gets me excited is innovation. It's doing things that have never been done before, or taking something that's been done and shifting the prism just a bit. I've been, as a senior level Black female, I've been first and only in so many spaces and so many rooms. And so it's always been important to say, what can I bring that's going to really advance the agenda, if you will. I launched an event 3 years ago when I moved from Connecticut, from Stamford to New Orleans, which is where I'm from and where I am now, called Dining with Deb. And you can go to the website, diningwithdeb.com, sign up for the mailing list. But in short, Dining with Deb was an event to bring professional women together across racial lines, across generational lines, across industry lines. It was all about professional women connecting and being able to share and help each other and move each other's agendas forward. So we had over 300 women, sold out, long waiting lists. And the last session we did, we had one question that we pondered over the entire dinner. And that question was, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And so I'll leave you to think about that today. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. And our next panelist is Jordan Malice, a high school senior, also from Stamford, Connecticut.
Hey, Jordan.
Hi. Happy International Day of the Girl, everyone. It's an awesome holiday. I don't know if it's a holiday, but also thank you, Deb and Fran, for being here. You are both amazing, and I love hearing what you have to say. And my question is, what is your overall best piece of advice for young girls, either middle school or high school, for trying to make change in our community for the future?
You want me to go, Fran, or?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would say best piece of advice, it's twofold. One, find something you're passionate about. don't just sign up for something because your friend is going for it or that seems to be the cool thing to do. Find the thing that really, when you think about it, it makes you smile. It just brings you joy. Find that thing, and then help to mobilize other people around that vision. You don't have to jump on someone else's vision. Find your vision. It's really the passion and the authenticity. It's all because, again, I have daughters. I've seen so many girls, try to fit into that mold, fit into that box. And my daughters, both of them, they were their happiest when they were doing things that they enjoyed. It didn't matter if anybody else cared, but what is it that you enjoy? That's my best piece of advice. Find that thing that you enjoy, that you have passion for, and just, go for it.
So I love that. And I actually totally agree with that. To find something that you're really passionate about is more than half the battle. So I'll build on what Deb just said, which is sometimes what I find with young people is that they have something that they're really passionate about and they launch an initiative. It could be a club, it could be, something in the community. And then what happens over time is they lose momentum. Momentum just starts getting lost. And one of the things that I would say, this is so tactical, but I'm going to share it, is every single meeting that you have, whether it's a club, whether it's community service, when you have the meeting, right, take your phone and in a group text or whatever you want to use, make sure that you write down the next steps from the meeting. So what are the action items and who is accountable for each action item? And I know this sounds so tactical, but I have to tell you, it is one of the most important habits that you can build from an execution and operating rigor perspective is, to make sure that you leave every single meeting knowing what the next steps are and who's responsible for each and what the timeline is. I mean, that's like project management 101. And that will just really ensure that people keep doing what they need to be doing to keep the initiative going. So I love what Deb said. That's number one. But then number two is you got to really stick with it and make it actionable.
Great advice. So our next question comes from the young lady sitting next to me, Olivia West, who is a high school senior also.
Yeah, so thank you again for joining us. You guys are both so amazing, and I love all of the advice you're giving. My question is that I was excited to hear about the appointment of Jan Fraser as Citigroup CEO, the first major Wall Street bank to appoint a woman. But I think it's also important to analyze and think about what took so long. So can you just share your thoughts and just talk about that a little bit?
So what took so long? Okay, there's like so much that goes into this. It's such a good question. And look, I think some of it is just an environmental and cultural, and if you look at like the past decades, right? It's taken women longer to get into these CEO positions. And it's for a lot of different reasons, right? In the beginning, it was just purely like people couldn't picture a woman in a CEO role. Then it became can she have a family and also be, a CEO? Sometimes it's a relationship and a networking thing, like to be able to get into that role, like, do you know the right people? Are you networking with the right people? So these are kind of like big things that take a really long time to kind of, it's like whack-a-mole, right? Like to really tackle. And, I also think it's interesting, like if I think about the jobs that I've had over the course of my career, I remember like looking up and seeing there just weren't that many women at the top. And the few women that were at the top, it was very much a scarcity mindset in terms of the way that they approached things. Like it was very competitive because they felt like, okay, there's so few positions at the top for women, so we're not going to support each other. We're really going to be competitive with one another. I think that what's the biggest thing that's changed over the last 5 to 10 years is I think that there's more of an abundance mindset where women are more likely to support each other. I mean, that's definitely something that I've seen over the last, 5 to 10 years, which is such a positive thing. But there's we could spend hours talking about this. I want Deb definitely to add her thoughts. So Deb, I'll turn it to you now.
Great, thank you. I think there have been, and it's a great question, by the way, I think there have been mental models of what success looks like. So in the instance of a CEO of a major bank, there's a mental model of what that looks like. There's certain jobs a person has had. And for a lot of reasons that Fran mentioned and others, in many cases, women didn't sit in all those chairs, didn't have all those jobs. What I think has started to happen in the last 10 years or so is that we found that that model is not necessarily correct. You don't have to have sat in all of those chairs. There are commensurate experiences that you could have in doing other things that could get you there and make you as competent and successful as well. As I was coming up in my corporate career, there were some women, but some women elected not to have kids. Some women didn't marry. I mean, there were a lot of choices and trade-offs that people made. I do believe you can have it all. I don't think you can always have it all at the same time. And that's a very important thing to think about. You can have it all. You may not be able to do everything right in the same sequence because as a mother, you're a mother. There are things that mothers do. That's just reality. That's just a fact. There are things that fathers do. Those things differ. But I think you're going to see more of it. I think it's really just been a lot of different reasons. But the one that I would say most, think about this. A year ago, could any of you have envisioned yourself taking your primary classes via Zoom at home? So think about how much that has changed just from March until now, a whole mindset shift. A whole shift now of companies saying, do we really need all this office space? In fact, I have a client who said, do we even really need to have all of our employees in this city? This city costs a lot to live in, and we've got employees all over the country now. So that mindset shifted dramatically. We didn't have that kind of thing as the impetus to promote a woman to CEO, but those things are moving forward.
Mm, great perspective. And Fran, I will say on your abundance concept that it is so heartening at Live Girl to witness the sisterhood and to watch how these young women support each other and lift each other up. And I really do think that is a key to getting more women in leadership and positions of power. So thanks for mentioning that. Our next question comes from the West Coast. Cecilia Wu is a high school senior from Portland, Oregon.
Hi everyone, so thank you for being here with us today. So my question is, you two have achieved a lot of success throughout, and I was wondering, how has your identification of the word success changed and evolved, and how do you measure success now?
Oh, that's a great question. Success, I would definitely say it's changed. I mean, when I was in a corporation, I wanted to go as far as I could in my field. And I did. I was blessed in that I really got pretty much to the top of the pyramid as president of the foundation and the chief diversity officer, the global chief diversity officer. However, what I would say is success for me was always multifaceted. That was one aspect of it. That was one slither, and that was the career slither. Success was also being a good mother and ensuring that my daughters were well cared for and that they, got to their sports events and all that good stuff. Success was also giving back in my community and being able to be recognized in my community as somebody people could go to. So it had a lot of different aspects to it. I think now, because I'm running my own business and I'm retired, if you will, from the corporate job, that, achieving this different level is gone. I've done that. So now success is much more around some of the impact that I'm having with my clients. Am I able to assist them in achieving their goals? I coach women as well. Am I able to coach women so that they achieve their dreams? So always want to be successful, but I think it changes. And I think you gotta be comfortable that it is fluid. It is fluid throughout your life. What looks like success, I think will change. Fran, over to you.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. It's success looks so different based upon where you are in your life, and I just remember earlier on in my career, I have to be honest, like my success for me, it was very career focused. I don't think that I was as well balanced and well rounded and as multidimensional as I am now. I would say in my 20s and 30s, I was just so focused on climbing up, the corporate ladder, which I did. I made it to that president role, and at a big company. And like I would say that I had a rich life outside of work as well. But it just, compared to now where I'm a mom and, I do have like all this community service work that I'm doing. I work like Deb, I work for myself. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a startup investor. Success just looks very different for me now. Success is, can I create enough bandwidth during my week where I feel like I'm spending time on things that really matter. Like that's like a big thing for me. I'm looking at my calendar every single week. I'm looking at my meetings. I'm like, am I taking meetings that are aligned with my priorities and where I really want to be spending my time? Like, I just feel like time and energy are our most precious resources. So I feel the best and I feel successful when I feel like I'm really optimizing, the use of my time. So it does look very different today than it did. And I would encourage you to, like, I think a big part of being successful is being adaptable, being fluid, being malleable, being able to go with the flow, knowing that your priorities are going to change, your goals are going to change, having a growth mindset, right? You don't, like, not feeling so stuck, like this is what I've decided to do and this is what I need to do. You can mix things up and change things around and be flexible. I think that's just, especially now, especially where we are in the world right now. I love to plan. I'm poly planner. I cannot plan right now, right? It's like day by day. I'm just like going day by day, going with the flow.
Yeah, so true. So great question. And our next question comes from Kelly Taylor, who is a college sophomore at Housatonic Community College.
So thank you, ladies, for joining us, especially this Sunday afternoon. I'm so grateful to speak with you all. So my question is, what were your greatest personal challenges what was your greatest personal challenges and or hurdles you encountered during your career path, and how did you address them?
I can start, Deb. I think I would say one of my greatest personal challenges during my career was actually very, very much related to the topic of this webinar, which was I was very shy. Unlike Deb, especially early on in my career, I was very nervous about speaking up in meetings. If I was in a group of, I don't know, 10 or more people, and I felt like there was somebody in the meeting who was really intimidating, I had a really hard time speaking up. And it took my boss to actually pull me to the side, after one of these meetings and really encourage me to say, look, Fran, you're smart, you're bright, you have opinions, you have points of view, you need to share them. Otherwise you're going to be invisible. And it was such difficult feedback to hear from him, but I knew he was absolutely right. And I actually looked at the agenda for the next meeting and I picked one topic on the agenda that I felt comfortable speaking about. And I practiced what I was going to say, because when you practice, you feel more confident. And I spoke up. I spoke up in the meeting. And the more I did it, the more naturally it came to me and the more comfortable I felt. But that was something that I really had a hard time with. I would agonize like over the exact perfect words to use, or I would wait for like the perfect opening in the meeting for me to speak up. And that really took me a long time to kind of get to a place where I felt confident enough to use my voice. So I love that this is the topic of this webinar because it's so important. And I know for me, it started at a very young age. I always had a hard time speaking up in class, or if someone else said we should do this, I just went along with it. I was in like people pleasing mode. So use your voice, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get doing it.
And for me, it was, as I mentioned when we started, as a Black female, I was a first, few, and only in so many spaces, in most spaces, quite frankly. So it was the, do people see me, really see me for who I am, not clumped in with other women, because my view, my life experience may be different than other women in the room, or my life experience may be different than African-American men who are in the room, but do people see me for what I bring? And so for me, it was around being confident that my view, though no one else in the room may have this view, was a valid view because it was my life experience. Does that make sense? And so it was feeling like, yeah, you know, I'm going to say this and look around and everybody, nobody's saying anything, and not feeling weird, like, oh my God, did I just say something wrong? But knowing that, no, it can't be wrong because it's my life experience. It's how I see the world. It's the lens through which I look, and that makes it valid. And so I would encourage you to feel that way about yourself, because you may find yourself as a first, a few, or an only in many spaces. And whatever your life experience is, that's enough. That makes it valid.
Powerful advice. So we have one last question, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience to see if they have any questions. So audience, as we ask this last question, if you do have a question, you can either ask your question in the chat feature, or you can use the Q&A function. So either works for us. And our last question on our panel comes from Tiara Starks, who is a college junior from the University of New Haven.
Hello, thank you both for engaging this conversation with us. It's been great to hear from both of you. I really love learning more about the corporate world from a female perspective. You both mentioned knowing that you wanted to climb to the top of the corporate ladder very early on in your careers, and obviously it's evident that you've both achieved so much so far by maintaining that growth mindset. So I just wanted to ask, if you could pick one achievement in your career so far, which one would you consider to be the most impactful, and where do you see yourself in the future in terms of continuing to impact your own communities?
Fran, you want to go? Or?
Sure. You know, for me, I would say the thing that I'm the most proud of in terms of achievements would be the book, you know, writing The Myth of the Nice Girl. I've always wanted to be an author ever since I was a little girl. You know, reading is like my favorite thing to do. And I just never could have pictured myself like growing up to actually be an author, to actually have a book published, you know, by a major publisher. So I think just like from a personal achievement perspective, you know, writing the book and getting it published just means so much to me. And then obviously what's even more powerful is for me, the message that's in the book that I want every single woman to hear. So going back to my why, you know, my why being impact, I really do feel that the book has had, you know, an enormous impact, and I hope that it will continue to have an impact, and that more will come from it, you know, just like my speaking practice came from it, which was unexpected. I'm so curious to see, you know, I love what Deb said about like being open, you know, being open to the possibilities. Like I'm so excited to see what else comes out of it.
That's great. For me, Tiara, from a professional achievement standpoint, the thing of which I'm most proud is being appointed a corporate officer at GE. The first Black female corporate officer. So to frame that, at the time, GE had 300,000 employees, you know, operated in 100 countries. And so there were 186 officers. So that means you were really in the thin slice. And so that appointment by the board of directors was huge. It was huge because it was recognition that my hard work sort of paid off. But also what it meant to so many other people. I had over 650 emails from people all over the world who were just so happy, so thrilled to see this, because it represented for a lot of people, hey, if you can do it, I can do it too. And so that was gratifying and overwhelming, because I knew people would be happy for me. I didn't realize the weight at the time and the gravity that it had for people, you know, of truly sort of shattering a glass ceiling. So I still remain very, very proud of that.
Okay, great. So again, just to our audience, I just want to remind you, if you do have a question for Fran or Deb, you can either post that question in the chat or use the Q&A function. And I will start. There is one, the first question here is, can one or two of the girl panelists tell us how we as adult allies can help you, raise your voice and discover the power of your voice to make positive change? So basically, how do you want the adults listening today to help you with that? And we'll just let any of the girl panelists who would like to answer that. Tiara, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously this is very just inspiring to have two obviously very accomplished women speak to us. I know for me personally, I'm a junior in college. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want to do. But I guess what I think as someone who wants, okay, so I would want someone who is an adult ally to just continuously listen. Obviously, we're always going to have challenges we have to overcome, regardless of what industry you want to go into. I know a bunch of the girls on this panel want to go into different things. So I think just listening and being along for the ride whenever there's a challenge and to try to help us get out of those challenges. And obviously, not everyone's going to have the answer to everything, but just having that support all the time and saying like, you can do this, and like keeping us motivated would definitely be helpful as someone who wants to be an ally to someone who's younger than them.
Great response, Tiara. Thank you. So our next question comes from Soraya and Layla, and their question is, what advice do you have for a young author like me to open a bookstore or business? I don't want to wait until I'm an adult to do it. I love that. She's ready to get going now. What advice do you have?
Well, so I have to tell you, pre-pandemic, I was actually working on opening a bookstore. And it's on pause for right now, but I do want to come back to it at some point. So I'll share with you kind of what I'm doing in the interim. There's a wonderful website called bookshop.org where you can buy books. And when you buy books, basically you're supporting independent bookstores. So it's an incredible way to give back to independent bookstores. You can create your own bookshop. So think of it as like a digital bookstore for now, right? Because brick and mortar is a little, it's a little risky right now, but that's a platform that you could use, certainly. You could also, create a column. You could write blog posts. You could do an Instagram, a bookstagram, which is actually something that I'm working on launching too, because I feel like I need to like scratch this itch in some way while I'm waiting to open the bookstore. And the other thing I will tell you is that I attended an amazing workshop. It's like the workshop to do if you're looking to open a bookstore, it's conducted and run by Paz, P-A-Z, and Associates. And I actually went to Amelia Island, Florida at the end of February to this workshop. My really good friend and I went. It was a 2-day workshop, and they're doing a lot virtually, so you can learn a lot from them. They're really who the Trade Industry Association, the ABA, they use Paz and Associates for everything. So if you want to just like Google them, there's a lot of really great training there to open up a bookstore.
If I could add one thing just to, because I don't know anything about opening a bookstore, but to elevate the question. So if anything that you want to do, go talk to somebody who's doing it or who's trying to do it or who's done it. You can Google search, but if it's bookstore, whatever it is, talk to somebody who's doing it and make sure you ask the right questions. What worked well, what didn't go well, what surprised you about it? And then take careful notes, keep notes on what you heard, because as you learn, you'll learn a lot of just from talking to people who are doing whatever it is you aspire to do.
Okay, we have just an excellent question here, and I'm going to paraphrase a bit, but today's theme is obviously about using our voices to make positive change. The question relates to in today's world, especially, which is a very divisive environment. Do you have any specific advice about how we can use our voice today for unity and just and for positive change in this divisive environment?
I would say you've got to find like-minded individuals. You know, sometimes you may find yourself in a place where people don't believe what you believe politically or spiritually or whatever, and it's hard. It is really hard to be that person. So sometimes you have to try to find people, particularly at your age, who have the same general belief system, who have the same sort of things that they want to do, and have them help to fortify you. You know, sometimes you may find that you're knocking your head against the wall, and I would say don't do that, because some people have views that are going to be their views, but be open. You know, again, if somebody wants to share views with you in a constructive way, engage in the dialogue. And the last thing I'd say about all of that is there's a concept called grace, giving each other real grace. So everybody doesn't come to the table with the same life experience. So I wanna say, don't stumble over the words. The conversations may be imperfect, but if we can communicate about something, maybe you can convince me of something I hadn't thought about. Maybe you can convince someone of something they hadn't thought about, or a different way of looking at it. And when people are open, I'd say give them grace and have those conversations. If people are closed, then if they're really closed, then I would say, you know, knocking your head against the wall could bring you down, and that's not really the space you want to be in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would say, look, if you are having a conversation with someone who has a different perspective or a different point of view, being respectful and, you know, really just trying your hardest to understand where they're coming from and what their why is. I mean, I usually find myself in those situations asking a lot of questions because I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to understand what their frame of reference is. And being respectful in that way, especially when it's a diverse point of view, it allows you to establish trust, you know, and really build a relationship. So I think active listening, being respectful, really trying to understand the other person's why. The other thing I would say, you know, from a broader perspective is I'm sure you're all on social media, and, you know, this is a great time to use social media for good, and, you know, and to really put out messages that are positive, and don't be afraid to share, you know, what your beliefs are and what your values are and who you're voting for and why and what your voting plan is. And I mean, just all of that. I mean, it's just so wonderful that we have these platforms and tools that we could actually use for good, you know, for good. So I would definitely encourage you to do more of that.
Can I add to that? And I'm gonna, Fran, just have a little bit of a different perspective with that. Sure. I think you may need to be careful what you share on social media, because depending on where you live and who you're involved with, I mean, I'm involved in a situation right now, the reason I say this, where a girl has withdrawn from a school that I consult with because she felt bullied because the people around her had a particular political view and hers was different and so forth. So I would just be, and I know there was some looking at social media, and so I would just caution a little bit. I think that the environment right now, unfortunately, is so divisive that in a different world, I might have said, yeah, that's good, but I would have a question around that at this point.
Yeah, definitely be thoughtful about it, right?
Right. So we could keep going. We've got several more questions, but I'm just looking at the clock, and we need to transition because we just have one quick activity to close. But Fran and Deb, thank you so much for sharing your story and your advice. And as Chessa said, you are both trailblazing female role models, showing us what's possible. And as you've seen from these girl panelists, you know, there's many young women ready to step up and lead, and that's so exciting for us. For me personally, it gives me hope, and I think it's such a great thing for our world. So we've touched on so many different ways today, the topic being, you know, how to spark the conversation about young women discovering the power of their voice to make positive change. So we're actually gonna end with some audience participation. We're gonna do a Menti, and Allison's going to put that up on screen. We do these a lot in our Confidence Club groups, and it's a quick way to get a pulse and get some quick audience participation. But for those of you who haven't done a Menti before, you simply need to get out your device, your phone or another device, and go to www.menti.com and enter the code that's on the screen. And so the question is to encourage girls everywhere to discover the power of her voice. Please answer this question. Today, I commit to help girls be or being, and your answer could be brave or confident, but just go to menti.com and answer that question, and we'll just pause for a second to let people to participate. And on a Menti, people are entering words. I see today I commit to help girls being powerful, brave, strong. And the larger the word means that the more people, as people are starting to input the same answer, that word becomes larger on screen. So we see that several people, many people are putting in brave, strong, empowered. Today I commit to help girls being themselves, courageous, curious, empathetic, vocal, a leader, kind. So many powerful adjectives on the screen, and I truly believe that with this community behind girls, they will be able to achieve and accomplish all those things. So today I commit to help girls being beautiful, kind, successful, fearless, confident, authentic, empowered, powerful, such incredible, powerful adjectives up on that screen. And again, from the community watching us today, both on Zoom, and we also have people watching on Facebook Live. It's just an incredible feeling to know that all these people are cheering for our girls to discover the power of their voices. So thank you. Thank you, Allison, for putting that up. So just in closing, I just truly, again, want to thank our speakers, Fran Hauser and Deb Elam, and all of our amazing, wonderful, brilliant panelists. I also want to thank our sponsors, AXA XL and Design Dot, who obviously are making a statement about how their companies support girls and women by sponsoring today's event. And I also want to thank the amazing Live Girl team behind today's event, Chelsea Starks and Allison Waller. They are such incredible, magical team members making all of this happen. And we want you to stay with us. Follow us at Go Live Girl. We provide year-round, free of charge leadership development and mentoring for girls starting in grade 5 through college. Allison is putting some of our links in the chat. We've got our middle school confidence clubs kicking off. We've got our high school league and leadership council and activist groups kicking off. So there's lots and lots of different opportunities to get involved. And we just want to thank you all for joining today and for being a part of the conversation and for celebrating the International Day of the Girl with us. So thanks, everyone.